hope you just finished a large bowl of shredded wheat if you wanted to, and if you didn't.
So they're eating shredded wheat for lunch? Because
For
you said
lunch.
good afternoon,
I
but
did.
you said
That's
shredded
a perfect
wheat.
thing
That's
to be
breakfast.
eating.
Plus, you don't know when they're going to be watching because we're on the internet. They could watch
That's
it
true.
any
They
time.
could watch it any
It could be
time.
midnight snack
3 in
time.
the morning.
And you're saying...
And I hope they just finished shredded wheat. This is the longest it's taken me to give a proper introduction.
And shredded wheat is not a sponsor of the show.
Oh,
by the
no,
way.
not at all. But
if you want to be, I'm sure he'd listen.
We can maybe work something out if you wanted to be shredded wheat. But I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me today is the Talmadge Rodger Varnado the third.
I'm equal now.
There we go. There we go. So by the time y'all see this, the 2025 NFL Draft will have taken place. But we're here to talk about some football, some quarterbacks specifically. I'm wearing a shirt of one of my favorite players and a phenomenal young quarterback, Jaden Daniels. We're here today to talk about the phenomenal young quarterback, Jaden Daniels. We're going to talk about a couple other guys today that are not Jaden Daniels. But they were both very high draft picks in the 2023 NFL Draft. Number 1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young. Number 4 overall pick to the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson. So before we dive all the way in, I'll just say both these guys were top 4 picks. They're both about to be going into their 3rd season. Both of them have had a bit of a roller coaster start to their careers. So the question that we're asking today is, how much confidence should any of us have in either of them at this point? So we'll start with Bryce Young. For the 2023 season, his rookie season, he did start all 16 games. The Panthers were 2-14 that year. Bryce Young had 2,877 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Certainly did not inspire a lot of confidence by the way he played that season. He's never been really a rushing threat, but I'll just look real quick here since it is available. That year he had 39 carries, 253 yards, 6.5 yards a carry. So he's not a rushing threat, but that's not terrible for a guy that doesn't really look to run the ball a whole lot.
And that's a bit overrated in my opinion anyway.
What's that?
Just can you escape within the pocket?
I
don't care how many yards you rush for, but when you're in the pocket, can you sidestep? Can you step up in the pocket? Can you feel the presence? That's mobility to me. And there's a difference between mobility and
being a rushing threat, yes.
Because Tom Brady to me had great mobility in that he could sidestep, he could step up in the pocket, he had good pocket presence, he could get his shot throw off from any arm angle, no matter what the pressure was. Whereas he wasn't a rushing quarterback, obviously.
True.
So there's a difference.
And Mahomes is a good example. Mahomes is a bit of a rushing threat, but he's more, to your point, he's great,
especially the last few years.
Pocket.
When he first came in, I'd actually call him borderline both.
Yeah.
Still more of a pocket guy, but he could run if he had to. And he still can, but now I think it's more of within the pocket.
He escapes and avoids pressure very good within the pocket. So Bryce Young, after his rookie year, a lot of people were acting like, oh, that was such a wasted pick.
I was one of them.
What a joke.
I'll admit I was one of them.
Yeah, and, especially when the number 2 overall pick, C.J. Stroud, has the type of season he had for the Houston Texans. Was it a huge mistake? What were the Panthers doing? They traded DJ Moore, and they did all this and traded up for the number 1 pick, and then this is what they got.
Yeah.
Now, Bryce Young did put up some monster numbers in college. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but his sophomore year, he had over 4,800 yards passing and I think 47 touchdown passes. And playing for the Alabama Crimson Tide. He didn't play for William and Mary.
Right.
He played for a very top level program. You and I have said if you're good enough to start for Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, you're probably good enough to be in the NFL. So Bryce Young was their starting quarterback for 2 years, had very good numbers. Not really a shock why he was a pretty high draft pick. But I just went over his numbers as a rookie. Last year, season 2, you hope for some improvement. You hope that the guy went through his growing pains and learned some things and that he's going to improve in season 2. So 2024, he played 14 games. He started 12. If I'm not mistaken, he was benched after week 2 in favor of 36-year-old Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Bryce Young did end up starting the majority of the season. In the 12 games he started, the Panthers went 4-8. That is technically an improvement from 2-14. They did win a couple of extra games. His numbers on the season, 2,403 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. While that's still not really impressive, he did improve 11 touchdown passes to 15. He also, instead of 10 interceptions, he threw 9. I know those are small improvements, but I do want to make the point. He did show some improvement. The rushing numbers, the yards still weren't great, but he had 249 rushing and did have 6 rushing touchdowns. So that tells me the instincts were there when, instead of throwing into traffic and turning the ball over, if I think I can outrun you to the goal line, if I'm within the 5-yard line or whatever, seems like he started to learn when he could do that. He did have 6 rushing touchdowns.
Well, I think his biggest problem as a rookie, and even his second year, is he doesn't push the ball down the field. He's become more of a check down quarterback, and that tells me he doesn't have a lot of confidence. Now, you started to see that in the second year. The other thing I would say is this. You have to put a lot on organizational stability, and he hadn't had that, number one. Number two, he's a shorter quarterback. So those first few years, he's probably going to have to figure out, how can I get my ball off in the pocket? I'm going to have to change my arm angle. I'm not going to be able to go over the top like I did in college. I might have to break some rules and go sidearm like a Drew Brees learned how to do. You saw, if you watch tape on him from the first year to the second year you saw that. He was starting to figure out.
Especially by the end of last year.
Yeah, you saw him figuring out arm angles, how he get his ball past the line of scrimmage. He pushed the ball downfield a little more. I actually, based on everything we just said, I don't know if I'll ever say I believe he's going to be a star in the league, because you got to show that. And sometimes you either have that or you don't.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, in the right situation, and hopefully he gets more stable in Carolina, and from what he's learned, and he's got decent athleticism, I think he can be a winning quarterback in the NFL. And on a scale of 1 to 10, if I had to say how likely would he be, to be successful and overcome his early trials, I would say a 7 out of 10, which is a pretty high percentage. And I think, too, in the NFC, there's not a lot of great quarterbacks. So if he becomes even an average starter and they put a good team around him, they're going to compete for the playoffs every year. And that's all you really ask for. Now, once you start doing that consistently, then you can start saying, okay, now let's compete for championships. But I think, if they get the right players around him, can he be a quarterback that leads you to the playoffs consistently, especially in that conference? Yeah, I think so. And I wouldn't be surprised in 3 or 4 years we're wondering why we doubted him.
Those are very good points, and not really far off from my own assessment. And you and I had not really discussed Bryce Young at length prior to today, but I'm going to go over the numbers for the final 3 games of this past season, and then I'll touch on some of what you talked about. But in week 16 last year, the Panthers won against Arizona Cardinals 36-30 in overtime. Bryce Young's numbers for that game, the yardage wasn't huge, 158 yards passing, but he was 17 of 26, 65.4%. 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he had 5 carries for 68 yards and 1 rushing touchdown.
That's winning football.
That's winning football.
It might not be explosive, but it's winning football.
But he didn't turn the ball over, and they won a close game in overtime. And that's exactly.
And he got yards on the ground when they were there, and had a decent
68 on only 5 carries.
I mean, that's winning football.
That's kind of to your point. You think he could win some games. Week 16 against Tampa Bay, they got drummed pretty good, 48-14. But in that game, Bryce Young, 15 of 28, 203 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had rushing. He only had 2 carries for 8 yards. So not a huge game, but the thing I want to touch on, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Even though they got drilled, he did account for their only 2 touchdowns. In the season finale,
and Baker was hot towards the end.
I was going to say, Baker Mayfield's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So
Let's
there's
not push
that.
it, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
He belongs in the conversation.
He puts up numbers of one
Yes,
of the,
he does.
I'll put it that
Very
way.
good numbers, in fact. Against Atlanta in Week 18, Bryce Young, the Panthers did beat the Falcons 44-38 in overtime. If I'm not mistaken, that's what knocked Atlanta out of playoff
Yeah, the Falcons needed the
contention.
game.
The Falcons need to win to get in the playoffs, so there was no joking around here. Bryce Young in that game, 25 of 34, 73.5%, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 5 carries for 24 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. The young man accounted for 5 total touchdowns, no interceptions, and helped them knock the Falcons out of playoff contention.
Yeah, I truly think he's turning the corner. Now it's just a question of, okay, how good are you going to be?
Yeah.
But I think he's starting to show why they chose him as highly as they did. And again, a lot of obstacles. When you're picked that high, you're usually going to a bad organization.
Or you're not going to get picked that high. Yeah.
Number 2, you're not going to have a lot of talent around you because that's why they lost so many games. Number 3, there's probably some instability in the organization because bad organizations make a lot of changes and they're not consistent. On top of that, he's a shorter quarterback that has to figure out, how can I get my throws off in this league? Mm-hmm. It's not like he's 6'4" and can throw over the top.
No, and when you got some of the best athletes anywhere blitzing at you, and they're 50 to 75 pounds heavier, and they're still more athletic, and they're trying to crush you on every play.
And let's face it, when you lose confidence. So he probably lost some confidence on top of that.
He had to.
So when they rebuilt him and they brought in Dalton, and hopefully they'll get some stability, he's starting to flash. I mean, again, I wasn't super high on him coming out because I don't like short quarterbacks, I'll be honest. But I could see a path where he can be a winning quarterback in the NFL.
And I think so too, and I'm not willing to say I think he's going to turn it around and have a Hall of Fame career because first of all, I just don't know.
And we have to see it.
And we have to see it for me to say that. But I will say a lot of your reasoning, when you have a 5'10" rookie quarterback who doesn't run a 4.3 40, you know he's not going to be just out racing everybody. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm. It's mostly his mental understanding how he plays a game that he succeeds. You've got to put him in a position to succeed. Carolina did not do that.
Yeah, they didn't.
This is a terrible example, actually a great example of an organization not setting their employee up for success. And you can look at this in the business world, any business, any sport. They did not put him in a position to succeed. They didn't surround him with weapons. They traded DJ Moore to get the draft picks to move up, rather. And they didn't surround him with another great receiver. Yeah. I mean, nothing against Adam Thielen, but he was the receiving threat. And at his age, he's not Justin Jefferson. You didn't put anything around Bryce Young. And when you got a 5'10" quarterback, you got to really improve that offensive line. And they didn't, from what I remember at least, you didn't see a lot of rollout plays to get him outside the pocket. There wasn't even a whole lot of shotgun to give him time to see the blitz. Mostly under center, straight drop backs, and him running for his life.
I didn't watch them a lot. I did watch them play Tennessee his rookie year.
Okay.
And they actually did go to a lot more shotgun that game. I don't remember any rollouts specifically, but I do remember they used some shotgun. What I also remember though is he had opportunities down the field, but his confidence was so shot, he was just quickly going to the check down. He was so worried about the rush, he wasn't seeing the whole field. It's like, let me get the ball out of my hand, which is a good thing, but at the same time, you got to trust your players around you, and you got to let a play develop. And if you don't have faith that it can or will, then you can't go down the field. If you're not challenging a defense down the field, sooner or later, they're going to read your playbook because there's only so many plays you can run, intermediate routes and short routes. I'll just take away the first read. I'll take away the running back out of the backfield.
As long as we
I'll cover the tight end with a good linebacker. He's got nowhere to go with the ball.
True. So, yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done organizationally. In this case, I blame the organization more than I do the player. I think Bryce Young...
He's a character guy. It's not him.
Yeah, he's not, and again, he's not Jaden Daniels. He's not Lamar Jackson or Tom Brady. But he's still, and I'll say this, and before we get to Anthony Richardson, with both Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson, they've only had 2 years. you and I have talked about this before. The flat out absence of patience in today's NFL is really concerning. People are talking about Bryce Young as if he shouldn't even be starting anywhere, and the Panthers should move on and all this and this. The young man's had 2 years, and you hadn't put him in position to succeed. You don't even know yet if he's going to be a good quarterback, in my opinion. We haven't fully seen him have the opportunity, so they need to keep improving. They need to keep surrounding him with weapons. They really need to do something about the offensive line. And to your point, and the point I made with the stats of his last 3 games, he's already shown he can play with some more confidence. He can help that team win some games. How great will he be? I don't know. Like Talmadge said, we've got to see it to really know. But I wouldn't be that shocked in a few years if he's, at the very least, a pretty efficient game manager that's helping them win some games, even if his stats don't knock you off your feet.
Well, and people always knock that game manager tag, and I know why, because it generally means, like you just said, it's someone who doesn't wow you when you watch them play.
They're not going to
But
win
what's
the
wrong
game.
with being a game manager? Your job as quarterback is to manage
The goal's
the game.
to win the game.
So, yeah, I think I could definitely see that. And in fact, I could see him being even a little more than that. Now, here's the interesting part. Not only will he improve and continue to improve, but also will he do it for this team? Because what we're seeing now more and more of, once somebody goes to a second or third team, look at the Baker Mayfields, look at the Geno Smiths, look at the Sam Darnolds. It took 3 or 4 teams in those cases
to find
for
the
them
right
actually
situation.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I could see him falling into that trap too. Maybe not with Carolina, but somebody's going to give this guy a second or third chance. He's going to have the chance to sit back, not have the pressure on him. And all of a sudden, someone's going to get hurt or someone's going to take a flyer on him. And all of a sudden, you're going to see what they expected to see at his first stop.
And then they're going to go, oh, this is the quarterback. The way. And to that point, after he had gotten benched last year, and there was a point where it's like, okay, is Andy Dalton just the starter now?
Right.
There was some talk. I don't know if you heard this or how serious any of it was. It did not happen, so it couldn't have been overly serious. But Tagliabue Ravioli was out with a concussion during that time. I heard some people saying the Dolphins need to send a mid-round pick and get Bryce Young and plug him in.
I heard that. And to be honest, he probably would work good in that system, because Miami system, because he gets one thing he does do is get the ball out.
He gets the ball out fast.
He didn't in the beginning. Now, sometimes he gets it out so fast because it's a check down, but he still gets it out quickly. And with their receivers and what they can do after the catch and that offensive system, he actually might have been a fit there.
Yeah, and he still could, maybe. We don't know.
Yeah.
But to your point, yes, sometimes it's all about getting the right opportunity. Sometimes it's just about being patient and realizing some of these guys aren't going to come in just destroy people in their first year.
But by the way, I don't blame organizations for being impatient, because owners are now impatient with them. If you're a
it all
GM,
starts at the top.
yeah, it's like before you could wait 3 to 5 years and some. I mean, Terry Bradshaw took him forever to become a good quarterback, and they lost a lot of football games.
And then what happened?
But all of a
helped them
sudden,
win 4 Super
exactly.
Bowls.
So back then, you could. When we were kids, you would hear coaches come in and say, "I've got a 3 to 5 year plan." They don't say that anymore.
They got a 3 to 5 game plan.
Right.
That's it.
If they start a press conference when they're hired by saying, "I've got a 3 to 5 year plan," they're probably getting fired right
They're
after
already
the press
looking
conference.
yeah.
Because they ain't waiting 3 to 5 years. So I don't blame organizations for doing it, because that's the pressure that's put on them. I just wish it were different, because
Yeah.
it's not fair to these guys.
I'm not too far off on that. I would say I do blame organizations, but it starts with the owners.
What's I mean? I
yeah.
don't blame the GM who's making the decision. I've got to go get another quarterback.
If you're the general manager and you don't do that, you're getting
Your
replaced.
job. You're
so
gone.
yeah, it's one of those things where I'm either firing you or I'm getting fired. I got to replace you so I don't get replaced.
And the other thing that happens is the rare times you do have a quarterback that steps right in and is successful, they think everybody should be able to do it. Because of Jaden Daniels,
because
the
of
Titans are going to
Jaden
think.
Daniels.
And even CJ took a step back this year.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily his fault, because the receiver, they had a lot of issues there. But I'm just saying, yeah, even he took a step back. So it's just so much pressure, and it's all about timing and the right organization, the right situation, and what the expectations are. There's so much that goes into it. So it's always curious to see if one of these guys is going to turn their career around.
Right, yeah, exactly right. And I mean, last year I was pretty sure Jaden Daniels was going to be really good wherever he went. He exceeded even what I thought about what he was going to do.
Everybody.
Yeah, he exceeded.
And we thought he'd be good.
And we knew he was going to be good, and he still exceeded. Okay, we pretty much are in agreement with Bryce Young. Will he ever be one of the all-time greats? Long way from saying that,
Right.
but I think he could be a guy that starts and can help win some games. Maybe it won't be with the Panthers because maybe he needs to find a better situation. So now we move on to the guy that was the number 4 overall pick in 2023, Anthony Richardson, and I almost spent too much time on this first point, but you made a good point going into last year. You said this guy only started 1 year in college. How good do we think he could be necessarily, as opposed to some guys that start
Even
2
though it
3
was
years?
even though it was the SEC, granted it was the best conference you could
Yeah.
do that in, but I always have questions about these guys that start for 1 year.
Yeah, that's true.
I
And
have
sometimes they
always have
surprise
questions
you,
about it.
but we just don't always know. So Richardson's 2023 rookie season was primarily marred by injury. He had a season-ending injury. He played 4 games. He did start all of those. The Colts were 2-2 in those 4 games, but he didn't even play a full 4 games.
Right.
He got knocked out early. His numbers for that year: 59.5% completion percentage, 577 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. For the time he played, the numbers weren't bad. I'm definitely going to look at his rushing because that's what he's mostly known for, is his athleticism. So in those 4 games his rookie year, he had 25 carries, 136 yards. The big thing that stands out, he did have 4 touchdown runs. But in 4 games, he averaged 1 rushing touchdown per game. So if he played a full 17 games at that rate, he's probably leading the league in rushing touchdowns from the quarterback position. So there was reason for some optimism going into year 2. Okay, the guy only played 4 games. What if he stays healthy? Look at the athleticism. There's all this talk going into last year, right?
For
So,
you,
I'm not saying you bought into it, but there's a lot of that talk being done.
You could talk yourself into it. Me personally, I hate saying that. Me personally, because it's me. It's either me or
You personally.
Yeah, I hate that phrase. So I just did something I hate. But I not to cut you off, but here's my problem. He didn't start a lot in college.
Yep.
And even before the combine, his name was on radars because Florida had a successful season. But it wasn't top 10. It was, what round are we going to take this guy in?
Yeah.
He has a great combine, so he's a workout warrior. And all of a sudden, I mean, the day after he worked out at the combine, there's a chance he can go in the top 5. And I'm always leery of that. I'm drafting a quarterback and a football player, not an athlete. And so if the tape tells me that I'm not sure you're a top 5 pick, why should the combine change my mind? So that was the first thing I had with him.
Yeah.
Second thing is his durability, because he's already been hurt both seasons he's been in the league.
Yep.
Third thing is, and we'll get to, I'll save this one,
We
but
know
you already know what it is, but I'll save that one. So I'll go to another thing. Here's the thing. Throws a beautiful deep ball. Beautiful deep ball. He is a heck of an athlete. I'll even break the rules and say he's a hell of an athlete. All those things are true. But can he play quarterback? Can he stay healthy? Can he get the confidence of his team? And by the way, he reminds me of a player, now not in their playing style, so when I say the name, don't say they're nothing alike. I get they're nothing alike. But he reminds me of Jameis Winston in that he will make a throw that makes you think, let me go ahead and get this guy from being a backup back into a starter role, because if he's making throws like that,
If he just did that.
I'm quarterback hungry. He can start for my team and make us better. So you're calling around the league during that game you're watching him to see if you can trade for him. While you're on the phone trying to make the trade,
He just threw an interception.
he threw an interception and you hang up the phone right in the middle of the conversation. That's what this guy looks like
that's
to
a
me.
good point,
Because
actually.
when he makes those long throws and when he makes those great runs, you're like, I can cook with this.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, he's
When
going
he
to...
breaks tackles and stiff arms and rips past people.
But you watch the next play he makes, and you're like, I can't win with this guy. Even if I put Cadillac talent around him, he's still not going to be able to win the game. And I don't know if that ever changes. I don't know if that ever
It
changes.
may not. It may not.
And I'm not talking that just with him. I'm talking in any situation. I don't know if that changes. It never changed for Jameis.
Yeah.
Even this year, when he got that first start with Cleveland, he was throwing the ball all around the field. They lost.
When they beat Baltimore.
They won the first one. Second one.
Yeah.
Same thing that made him great that game is the reason why he's not a starter in this game.
Yeah.
So could I see him maybe maturing into a role of a competent backup that could win some games for you if you're on a contender? For instance, if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles and he's my backup and I'm a contender and my starting quarterback gets hurt, do I have a good enough team around him for 2 or 3 games where he can keep us afloat and keep us in the playoff race?
Can we at least win one of those 3 games?
He may become that, but to me, he's always going to be the Vince Young of the world. He'll make a play that makes you go this and then he'll make a play that like, why is this guy even in the league? That's my thought, and we'll save one point.
So for this past year, he did play 11 games. The Colts were 6-5 in those games. He had a 47.7% completion percentage.
Which ain't going to cut it. Not even close. That's not even good for the 70s when 50% was considered a great completion percentage.
Exactly. In today's era especially, it's not. And he had 1,814 yards, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Rushing-wise, he did have 86 carries, 499 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So the rushing's still there, but again, and if y'all been following the channel, you know I love the athletic rushing quarterback. So I was a little more excited about this guy just because of what might he do. So the rushing yardage and the rushing touchdowns are still there this past year, but I am going to say, but so what? We already know he can do that. As much as I love that in a quarterback, I'll still even say that's great. But we know you can do that. The problem is with the other stuff I named. 47.7% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Yeah, he's got a strong arm, to your point. He throws a pretty good deep ball.
It's better. He throws a great deep ball.
Okay, yeah.
He throws
a great deep ball. Problem is he misses open receivers over the middle. He can't complete intermediate throws. He's got decent talent. Jonathan Taylor's a great running back when he's healthy. Those 2 guys should be a deadly run-pass option duo. They should be, this may sound crazy, they should be maybe a little less, but in the realm of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry.
I mean, you can see it. You can see
that potential should be there.
There's a path for that. Maybe not at that level, but obviously the same thing that benefits Ravens would benefit them.
Yes.
But and here's where I've always kind of disagreed with you as far as the dual threat quarterback. And I get what you're saying. In a perfect world, why wouldn't you want that?
Right.
But I think sometimes, and not you specifically, but just fans in general, even some teams now, it's almost like the first thing they look for is can the quarterback run? And I'm still a believer in to win in this league, you got to be able to throw the ball from the pocket. It's great that you can run around. It's great that you can and plus, how are you running around? Are you running around to run, or are you running around to extend plays to throw?
Yeah.
And that's where I struggle. You still got to throw the ball first.
And I don't disagree with that.
And that'll never change.
The things I love about Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, some of these other guys, and I'm even a much bigger fan of Justin Fields than most people.
Yes, you are.
I still don't think we've seen his best. A few years from now, if nothing changes and he doesn't improve, y'all can come back to me and say, Jerry, we're still waiting on that.
I'll give you this. I'll give him a better chance than Anthony Richardson because of the one thing that we didn't talk about.
Yes, and we will get to that. It'll probably be our next point. But with Justin, I think the athleticism's there. I don't think he's had the right situation. I hope we start to see that now that he's got Garrett Wilson and Bryce.
Plus in Chicago, he did flash.
Yeah, we've seen.
You've seen some good things.
Even with Pittsburgh last year, for the time that he started, they were 4-2. He was moving the ball. He was getting rushing yards and touchdowns. I think he takes a lot of heat for being this quarterback that's not that good. When truthfully, he's pretty good. You just got to utilize him properly, is my opinion. But for all those things I just said, Jaden Daniels throws a great deep ball and makes really smart decisions. Yeah. He runs when it's beneficial. Lamar Jackson can outrun you all day. He had over 4,000 yards and 41 touchdown passes last year, did Lamar Jackson. These guys are athletic, but to Talmadge's point, it doesn't matter if you can't still throw the football. Otherwise, let's use you like Taysom Hill, or let's move you to receiver like they did with Antoine Randall L. Let's convert you to tight end like I said they should have done with Tim Tebow. If that's your only skill set, let's still keep what makes you great, but let's not put you out there and ask you to be a quarterback if you can't throw from the pocket. So the guys that I do like and I'm a big fan of, they have to be able to do both, because otherwise you're just a really good athlete who's probably playing out of position.
Yeah.
And so the biggest reason for all the things I said about Bryce Young, I think he could turn it around. I will say, so you're telling me there's a chance that Anthony Richardson could still turn it around? Yes, I think there's a chance. We're going to both talk about our big reasons why we don't think that's going to happen. I'll say there is a possibility, and if, this is a big if, but if Anthony Richardson can ever figure it out and have more accuracy, stop turning the ball over, hit those intermediate passes, keep that athleticism, he will be deadly. I don't know that he ever will. In fact, I'm inclined to say he won't, but I'm not going to say it's impossible, and I'm just going to say if he figures it out, you concur he will be deadly.
Because he has he has the physical traits that you look for as far as size and arm strength and even mobility, like we've talked about. So I'll never say somebody can't do it, because obviously they wouldn't have picked him if he didn't have those traits. But when you look at some of the intangibles that make a good quarterback, I don't see a lot of those.
Right.
One of them we're getting ready to talk about, and we keep alluding to it. The other one is, like you keep saying, you've got to figure out how to throw. You can't miss the easy throw in the NFL.
Right.
You cannot miss it.
You can throw it 60 yards, but you can't dump it off 5 yards.
You know, a lot of times I'll use my own teams as like an anecdotal experience type of example. And I'll give you one. When the Titans drafted Jake Locker could make the impressive throw. He could run. He was elusive. The one thing, he didn't have a love for football, which I'm not if you don't have it, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. He just didn't have. Keep in mind, he signed one deal, his original deal, and he retired.
I forgot about that.
He said, I want to move on. That tells you he probably didn't have love for the game. But
couldn't have had too much.
But physically, the one thing he could never do is make just the routine throw. He missed too many routine throws. You can't keep drives alive like that. Like, you might get a big play of 30 or 40 yards to put yourself in scoring position, and then you've got a tight end or a running back in the flat to keep the drive going on third down. You miss that throw, and that's... If you can't sustain drives in the NFL, you're basically hoping your defense can hold the other team and get a turnover and shorten the field so you can make one big play and win it. Or your defense is good enough to hold it close, and then the athletic quarterback can make an athletic play at the end of the game to win it, which was a lot of teams' philosophies with the Michael Vicks of the world and stuff like that. Keep it close and he'll make a play in the end. My old Tennessee Titans were kind of like that. Hey, keep it close. Steve McNair will make a play in the end. That's a lot to ask, though, because if that play never comes,
because if that one thing doesn't happen,
you're not going to win. And that's the one thing. Very few quarterbacks, I'm not going to say it can never happen, but very few learn how to, quote unquote, consistently make the right throw. You either have that skill or you don't. A lot of times it has to do with mechanics too. His mechanics are horrible, by the way. He's got an elongated delivery, his footwork is bad, and that's why he can't make the routine throw.
For an athletic guy, the footwork needs a lot. And the biggest reason that Talmadge and I don't have a lot of confidence, I'll go ahead and say what it is, and I'm going to ask Talmadge to elaborate on it. I've already talked about the lack of patience bothers me. We got to give some of these guys some time. I can be very, very forgiving of the fact that you need to be more accurate. Mm-hmm. You got to learn to hit these intermediate routes. You got to stop throwing into traffic and turning the ball over. I can be patient, at least to a point, and very forgiving of some of those things. When the young man knows his team needs him on the field and he knows that they need him to help them win games, and he decides he's tired and needs to come out of the game, he gives up on his team.
I never heard of that.
That's one thing I have hardly any kind of patience for. Talmadge, elaborate for us, I know you will.
And here's the thing. Not that I've heard everything, and I look, I'm sure it has happened before, 'cause especially in the era before League
Before the
Pass and before
internet
internet and all
yeah.
that. So I'm not saying it's never happened, but I've never heard of it. And how do you get your team's trust back after that? That's the problem. I'm almost to the point where I can guarantee if he does somehow turn his career around, and that's a big if, but if he does, it's going to have to be on somebody else's team.
I
just don't see how you get this locker room back.
I ask the question now, how on earth does anybody in that organization have confidence in him? They went out and signed Daniel Jones in the offseason, who's not even a good quarterback, simply because they don't trust Anthony Richardson. The fact that they signed Daniel Jones tells you exactly what they think of him.
That, and I will say this, there might be another reason, but I'm not saying you're wrong, but the only other reason I can think they would do that is, like you say, they don't have trust in him because of what he did, during that game, or what they've seen in the offseason, like this guy's not getting any better, or they feel like maybe he's somebody who needs to have competition to get. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, or they might feel like, look, in this division, because the AFC South is not the strongest. True. In this division, if we get competent quarterback play, which Daniel Jones can give you. That's all he can give you.
He's not the worst.
That's all he's not going to give you explosive play. But they might be like, we're good enough to win 9-10 games. The 9-10 games can win this division. Because I know people are picking Houston. We saw Houston last year. They were a 10-win team. They're not setting the world on fire either. And we know Tennessee and Jacksonville aren't. So they might be like, we've got a good enough team to where if Anthony Richardson doesn't get off to a good start, Daniel Jones might not be able to win us a Super Bowl, but he can win us a division.
With the way
he can win us a division. Right now, he knows how to hand the ball off to our running back.
Yeah.
He did that with Saquon. He's made the playoffs with the Giants. You can say what you want, but he made the playoffs one year with the Giants.
That's true.
So I'm thinking this is going to obviously be a big year for Anthony Richardson, and I'll take it a step further. And we were talking about this before we started today. I'm not saying I'm counting on this. In fact, I would still be surprised. All I'm saying is I wouldn't be shocked. If Shedeur Sanders or even Jackson Dart drops to Indianapolis, it would still surprise me if they picked a quarterback because they have other needs and they've already invested in a backup and they have the potential starter that we're talking about. So I'm not saying that I'm counting on this or I expect it. In fact, it would still surprise me, but it wouldn't shock me if they took a quarterback.
That's a good point.
And I've talked to some people, because I used to work for a company that was based out of Indianapolis, so I know some folks there. And I've talked to some folks that are big fans of the team, and I've even seen some stuff online to where there is some scuttlebutt that they might be interested. Again, like me, they'd be surprised, but they wouldn't be shocked.
You almost have to keep that possibility open, I think. And by the time y'all are seeing this, that will be answered because we're shooting this a few days before the 2025 draft, so we don't know the answer to that yet.
So again, I'm still betting on they're not taking a quarterback.
Right.
Don't misunderstand me, but I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me if they did.
Yeah, and I heard a report not too long ago that Anthony Richardson, after they signed Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson said, "I don't care if y'all bring in Joe Montana, nobody's gonna beat me. I'm this team's quarterback." So maybe that did light the fire under him.
I hope he's right.
So we'll see.
We want to see the young. And look, we're not up here wanting to see somebody fail.
Right.
Especially somebody with those attributes. It's like God gave you this. I'd like to see you use it to your best ability.
Right.
But I'm just saying there's not a lot of case study that says he's going to turn this around. There's just not. Because, like I said, making that basic throw, making the NFL throw that you have to make, it's not like you wake up one day and you can make it because it's one of the easier throws. But if your technique is poor, your footwork's bad, you've been throwing that way for 20 years. You're not going to up and just
change it.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe. I'll put it this way because we did this with Bryce Young. I said on my scale of 1 to 10. So on my scale of 1 to 10, the chances of him turning around to me is a 4. It's a 4. It's possible.
Yeah.
Because of the traits, he's going to get another chance. Now, if he keeps quitting on his team, he's not.
Eventually, somebody's going to say, "Why would I want you on my roster?"
Right. But I hope he's not a Keely Smith. I'll just put it that way.
Ooh. It's starting to look like he might be. The only other thing I'll say, I pretty well agree with all of what you're saying. I'm just going to look at a few guys. I could look at more. But just talking about the patience level, that is just very sad. I'm going to real quick go over some stats for some pretty legendary quarterbacks. This first guy in his rookie year played in one game, was 1 for 3 passing for 6 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Did not start until season 2, where he did start 14 games, had 2,843 yards, 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Those are not mind-blowing numbers for the first 2 years. That guy's name, Tom Brady. Without an injury to Drew Bledsoe, he may never become a starter. We just don't know. And I could go on and on, but I'm just going to do a few more guys just to give a little more credence to what I'm saying. This next quarterback, his first year, he started one game, was 13 of 23 passing, 96 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Second season, he started 7 games. He had 1,795 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Again, nothing spectacular for his first 2 seasons. That young man's name, Joe Montana. And I'll do maybe just 2 more because I think I've made my point accurately enough. But just to show y'all, this is not that uncommon. This next quarterback is a rookie, played 2 games. 0 for 4 passing with 2 interceptions. Went to another team his second year. Started 13 games, 3,227 yards, 18 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So the yardage was up there more, but the turnover was still pretty high. That guy's name, Brett Favre. And then I'll maybe end it here with 1 or 2 more guys. This next guy, as a rookie, did start all 16 games. 3,739 yards, 26 touchdowns, 28 interceptions. That was all as a rookie. Those are much better numbers. I'll go ahead and tell you that was Peyton Manning. The biggest reason I even bring him into this conversation, 26 touchdowns, but he did lead the league by throwing 28 interceptions as a rookie. That's Peyton Manning. I'll do 1 more. Because, again, we could do this all day probably. I'll end with 1 more guy. This next guy as a rookie played 1 game. 15 of 27 passing, 221 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Second season, he started 16 games. 3,284 yards, 17 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Yardage was decent, but the touchdown-interception ratio very poor. That guy, Drew Bryce. So I just gave y'all examples of 5 legendary quarterbacks, 5 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, 5 guys that most people would put in the conversation of being amongst the best of all time. None of them in their first 2 years blew people away. So all I will say is sometimes we got to be a little more patient. Sometimes we got to give these quarterbacks a little more time, because playing quarterback in the NFL might be one of the hardest jobs on the planet.
It's the hardest job in sports anyway.
Yeah, I was even going to say even on the planet. It's not quite the same as brain surgery, but you got to make some pretty fast decisions with a lot going on. Nobody's going to die probably, but there's a lot of pressure.
The only thing harder is hitting a baseball. Hitting a baseball might be harder, but that's about it.
Maybe.
That's about it.
You think so, Chris Black?
Oh, hitting a baseball is way harder than playing quarterback.
But
I don't know about no way harder, but it's harder.
You hit something the size of a freaking BB coming at you from 60-something feet.
90 miles an hour or
90
more.
miles an
With
hour.
movement, by the way.
With movement, it is the most difficult.
And then you got to hit it to where somebody's not.
Where somebody's not going to catch
It
it.
is more difficult.
Because you could nail the ball that goes right to the first baseman, and you're like,
And nobody cares. Not that I disagree, because I have said baseball is the most technically challenging sport, but to what level? Is there a guy that has a 200 batting average in the majors? Is he more impressive than Jaden Daniels? He hits a baseball, but does he play on the level that Jaden plays a quarterback?
It's not
position?
perceived that he does. I'd have to know.
Yeah.
I'd have to know how well he gloved and ran and done other stuff.
Yeah, there's more factors.
But yeah, just based on that raw data, you'd lean towards the quarterback,
right.
obviously.
So but that is actually a great point, Chris, because hitting a baseball with that speed and with movement and all those other factors and hitting.
But it's down to those
not,
two, because at the same time at quarterback, you've got to have timing, you've got to have patience, you got to know when to get rid of the ball, you got somebody trying to kill you at the same time while this is happening. So and you got to read a defense, and they're getting more and more complex every year. So we do get it, but I would just say as far as the quarterbacks go, I hope both of these young men turn their careers around. We don't want to see anybody fail.
Yeah,
that's not why we're here. They both have reasons why they were drafted at highly, so somebody thought highly of them. So we want them to do well. I just think they have some things they've got to overcome, obviously, or we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Right.
And especially in the Colts case. That young man has all the physical traits, but he might have been overdrafted. And that's not his fault either.
That's not his fault.
You can't help where somebody drafts you. But if I was running a team, I never would have taken him in the top 10. I might not have taken him in the first round.
If somebody would have taken him in the 4th round and he was a backup and now getting a chance to start, we'd have a whole different perception of it.
Yeah. So
if he was finally starting in year 3 and was maybe more ready, whole different discussion perhaps. So, all right, that is our episode for today. I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you did like it, please show that by clicking the like button. If you've not already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really will enable me to continue to bring you this type of content as well as many other types. So, for Chris Black, for the Talmadge, Rodger Varnado the third, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Hope y'all have a great week, and I hope I see you again real soon. Minha